Sometimes I make a joke of saying, if the CCP was giving me Umar, every time I would put a comment on Twitter, I would be millionaire,
Hello, gentlemen. First of all, thank you for taking your time to join us for this talk. And maybe first we can take turns to introduce yourself.
So yes, my name is Angelo Giulianos. I'm Italian and I grew up in Switzerland. And I've been in China for the last 25 years, the last 3 years in Hong Kong.
I'm Barrie, founder of Best China Info, and I live in China. I live in Guilin. I've been in China for 7 years, and I love China. And now I consider myself a Chinese citizen.
Hi, everybody. My name is Cyrus Jansen. I'm originally from Florida in America. Had the great pleasure of going to China first in 2007. Lived a total of 10 years in China between the cities of Shanghai and Hong Kong. Then I've been relocated back to Vancouver, Canada, where I run a Chinese marketing business here in Vancouver for the last 4 years.
What brought you to China, and why did you choose the city that you lived in?
So I first arrived in China. I arrived in Taipei, and I wanted to learn Chinese. So the idea of going to China was because I knew about the opening up of China, basically what they call a 改革开放. And I thought that was a very critical moment to be in China, to experience China coming back as an emerging power.
I had reached the end of the line with living in the West. I was just bored. And also I couldn't agree with the way the West was being run. And so I decided to move, and a friend said, well, why don't you go teach? And I thought, well, China, I've always been fascinated all my life. It's a lifelong fascination. And I chose a beautiful place over a high salary, which is why I'm in Guilin.
I was very interested to go abroad. And there was an opportunity that was in Shanghai, China. And like many expats, I went on a 2-year contract, ended up staying for 10 years. It was fantastic.
Before you actually been in China, what was your impression on China, and how did it change over the time when you were staying here?
My first impression was skeptical at the beginning, and it just takes a lot of time just to really learn. It's not after 1 year that you understand China. When you start, you think you know about China after 1 or 2 years, and after 25 years, you become more humble and you realize there's so much to learn. And I've seen all the changes, and everything was extremely positive. So I think it's the best decisions I've made in my life.
Of China was first formed at the age of 11, 12, 13, something like this, when my hero was Li Xiaolong. And his films came to the UK, and I just saw this guy who was like super fast and super amazing, and he was my hero. And my fascination with China began then, and I tend to form my own opinions, and so it's just been a lifelong fascination. I've just become more in love with China. I've never felt alien. Since my very first day, I never felt like I was an outsider. I've always felt at home. And I've always felt like I've actually come back home.
So my first impression of China, I think at the time, when I first had the opportunity to go to China, I was 23 years old. I was like probably most Americans. I knew very little of China. I think back in 2006, most people probably thought of China as the old China, 1970, everybody's poor, everyone's wearing the same gray suit, there's a lot of bicycles, we kind of have these old stereotypes. And amazingly, here we are, 14 years later in 2021, I still think many people have these very old stereotypes. And so that was kind of the impression. And I remember one of the first questions somebody had asked me, oh, you're moving to China, do they have electricity in China? And I said, they're the fastest growing country in the world. Of course, they've got electricity in China. Like, what kind of question is that? But it just shows you, how little people really understood about China. Obviously, when I came to China and experienced it firsthand, it was amazing. I mean, really incredible experience, because very different than, our stereotypes and what Western media portrays as well.
Do you feel like there have been some accusations from the West on China? Do you think it's fair, and what are the reasons of these accusations?
I think we pretty much started at the same time. Cyrus, Barrie, so Daniel Dumbril. It was during like Hong Kong, the Hong Kong riots. And I think this is where you could see quite a few foreigners that actually had a first-hand experience on what was happening. And we could see the difference between the events on the ground and what the Western media and foreign government were saying. And I think it was quite obvious. What happened in Hong Kong was only the beginning. And then we have the Uyghur and so on. I don't know if you guys saw, there's Al Jazeera, they did something about Daniel Dumbril recently, and they say they contacted him and they never contacted him. So they accuse us as being paid by the CCP, I mean,
I wish.
I wish. I mean, sometimes I make a joke of saying, if the CCP was giving me Umar, every time I would put a comment on Twitter, I would be millionaire,
Yeah, exactly.
So I think it's all about injustice. We need to speak out. I think it's a responsibility that we have to speak out, because it's unfair for China.
I agree with you, Angelo. There is a danger. We get banned, we get suppressed. It's happened to me twice. Accounts that I had for 12 years were deleted by Twitter. That's 12 years of work that disappears. It's a hard blow. I agree, Angela. Also, Hong Kong was the spur for me. It was the terrible things that were happening to Hong Kong citizens. It was shocking and it was heartbreaking to me, and I could not be quiet about it. The injustices go on and on and on. And the Sisi, you say why? There's money. You follow the money, that people are being paid to do this, and you take the money away, they don't do this anymore. They're being paid, and they're being paid from the lowest to the highest levels. There's a lot of money involved in this. America just put up, was it 300 million or 300 billion specifically for anti-China propaganda. I see China as my home, and I will defend my home to the death if I had to do that, because it's my home. It's the place that gives me a living.
I really felt it was a responsibility for me to speak out, because I know that there are many Americans that don't know anything about China. I think the biggest thing we need to realize is, especially and I always like to speak from my perspective as an American, United States government, we look at always at China and we look at them through the eyes of the American government. Your government's not like us. You need to change to us. Well, China doesn't have the same government. You can't look at China, from your American perspective. So I think it really just boils down to cultural differences, and that is really a foundation, why we have so much differences between our country. It boils down to culture. And so I'm trying to do my best to help educate us and just realize that continuing down this war, this road towards war is not the best solution for these two countries and the entire world.
People in the West, they are misled emotionally. People learn about China watching Hollywood movies. But do they take books? Do they go to China? Do they spend a little bit of time to learn about the language and the culture? You go there and you spend some time and you just become humble. You just realize this is a civilization state that has 5,000 years of history.
The BBC used fear on a member of the royal family to secure an interview. They used fear on Princess Diana in order to secure an interview. If they will do that, the BBC, to a member of their own royal family, then they're going to do a whole lot worse to people. And it is this fear principle that they use.
I heard a really great comment today from a U.S. politician that came out and said, I think we need to distinguish, if we're going to talk about China's, say, human rights record, that's one thing, but we also need to distinguish that from the fact that we can't just keep using China as a scapegoat and blaming China for every single problem that America has.
China is dominated by communism or socialism with a Chinese characteristic, because China has its own history and it has its own pace of development. It's something very unique, and it's something that the West has never seen before. So this may intimidate them. So that's why they're trying to stigmatize China. Take the space exploring project as an example. We can see if SpaceX is doing something, people would praise it, would say it's brilliant. But if China is doing something similar about exploring the space, they would say maybe the rocket will fall. Maybe it's trying to set a bomb in US or something like that. It's quite ridiculous.
I put a new video on my channel last night. The latest accusation is China is using AI, what they call emotional recognition technology. And so I looked at this very briefly in a few minutes on Google. They've been using this in the United States since 2003. It's okay for them to do it. The minute China does it, oh, this is so bad. And they don't even have any proof that China did. This is a report from the BBC and the independent newspaper in the UK saying that somebody said, and it's always this somebody said.
You are disclosing the double standard of Western media, but it might be dangerous because, as far as I know, some of your accounts on Twitter have been suspended for a while, like Angelo and Barrie, both of you got suspended before. So, are you afraid of this, and why are you still keep doing this?
I think when I was 20, maybe I wouldn't have done it, just because of, I don't know, just being afraid and so on. I think the stage of my life now, past 50, I realized that I have a responsibility. I need to leave something, and I'm not afraid. Why should I be afraid? We need to step out now. This is a critical time for us. We are supporting China. We are legitimate because we've been in China for a long time. This is the time for us to speak out.
I think for me, the answer is very simple. Why do I keep doing this? It's because I'm fighting for a better world. I've got 3 young children. What world are they going to live in, 20 years from now when they are in university and they are, traveling the world? What kind of world are they going to be living in? This is definitely a fight worth fighting for.
As a human being, not as a pro-China or pro-America, as a human being, you see an imbalance, you see an injustice. It's your duty, because bad things happen when good people do nothing. And that's my maxim.
We are not anti-American. I think if there are some victims here, it's the American people. They're victims of the system. When you look at all this money that is spent on regime change, on defense, and when you look at homelessness, only $4 billion would be necessary just to get rid of homelessness. You see all this money poured. So again, we're not anti-Americans. If there are victims here, it's the Americans.
I just don't understand how United States senators are flying first class over to Hong Kong, taking photos with the protesters, and it's just such a double standard. And I called Ted Cruz out on this because I was very disappointed in his actions. He goes to Hong Kong, taking selfies with all these protesters. We stand with the people of Hong Kong. 1 year later, it said, well, we're not allowing any people from Hong Kong. They could be spies from Beijing. So it really wasn't about, standing with the people of Hong Kong. You just simply wanted to play democracy and use that to weaken the city of Hong Kong and to get at China. That's your motive. And again, here's my biggest issue. We got a lot of issues in Texas. That is where you are put in office to serve. Be selfish. Take care of the people of Texas.
Many foreigners are making up their mind whether they are coming to China or not. And also China is more and more welcoming foreigners to live, work, and study here. But many people are still on the fence. So for those people, do you have any advice for them?
So I probably get 1 to 2 emails a week from somebody that is, in their young 20s. Hi, Cyrus, I'm at university. I really want to go to China. Can you give me advice? And I always try to do my best to respond to those emails. And I'm always saying the same thing. The best way to jumpstart your career and to have really the best challenge. If I was to do it all over again, I would do the same thing. I would go right to China after university. It was the best learning experience in my life. And it really jumpstarted my career. And I don't know of any other country that's going to offer you, the same amount of experience that China can. I would say going abroad anywhere is a great experience, but why not do it in one of the fastest emerging economies in the world?
But I believe this from my heart, that China is a good future for the world. And I genuinely believe that China honestly has this win-win thing. And my advice to anyone coming to China is, there's an old phrase, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Or I say, when in China, be Chinese.
For the future, do you have any expectations on the development of China?
We just need to hope that there's not going to be any confrontation, where we are going to focus on prosperity, on real human rights. So I'm very hopeful. I think time is on the side of China.
When you look at all of these emerging technologies that are coming out of China, you can look at how they're investing tremendously in solar power, renewable energy, the electronic vehicle market, digital payments, central bank digital currency. I had an author of a book that was just published called Cashless, and he said something that really stood out to me. The entire world owes a debt of gratitude towards China because they're the first major superpower to develop a central bank digital currency. And as a result, other nations that follow this line, because China was the trailblazer. And they are really showing the world this future technology. And that's really exciting.